So we've talked a lot about film, we've used some box score statistics, but now let's get a little bit more in depth. Let's use some advanced analytics here, the ones that tend to not lie as long as you're using them with the right context, and really see what we can learn here about Joe Burrow. First things first, let's keep it simple. Let's just look at where he ranks up in certain key categories, and then we're going to kind of get into categories that I think we can actually learn something about heading into the Super Bowl, maybe where his strengths and weaknesses, not many weaknesses, but where some of the potential weaknesses might be. So first, what you see on your screen, these are just where he ranks in specific categories. So right off the bat, Pro Football Focus grade, he's first, number one in the NFL in PFF grade. Big time throw percentage, he ranked tied for 7th. And turnover-worthy play percentage, even though he had a decently high amount of turnovers, only 4th in football. And I'm telling you, using turnover-worthy plays and turnover-worthy play percentage is a much better way to measure this stuff than simply just using interceptions, because there's so much flukiness that can go into that. I think about the interception he had this year where he hit an open Jamar Chase who dropped the football, it went backwards and got intercepted. That counts as an interception, but makes his Pro Football Focus grade go up, which is why these numbers tend to be better and tend to be more accurate than just box score numbers. ADOT, or average depth of target, he ranks 13th, and so, kind of mediocre in terms of how far he pushes the ball down the field, and this could be a Burrow thing or it could be a scheme thing. Adjusted completion percentage, he is first there as well. And time to throw, he's 11th, which seems pretty quick, especially considering how often he will scramble at times, which typically causes the typical time to throw to go up a little bit. So these numbers are interesting. What do we really learn about it other than Burrow is awesome? Not really much, but still interesting. However, let's look at some stats that could maybe help us understand perhaps how Burrow matches up against the Rams defense and just how the Bengals offense matches up against the Rams defense in general. So a chart like this is going to be basically how he is when he's under pressure, when he's not pressured, when he's blitzed and when he's not blitzed. And the two categories you see on the top of the screen, his PFF grade and his passer rating. And you see a lot of low numbers because that's where he ranks in terms of those grades, and he's a really good quarterback. When he's under pressure, 5th best PFF grade, but 2nd best passer rating. When he's not pressured, best PFF grade and 5th best passer rating. When he's blitzed, you have the best PFF grade, although 4th best passer rating, and when he's not blitzed, it's 3rd for both. So what's kind of interesting is that, for him, so he gets better when he is blitzed, although you might look at it and say, well, actually the ranking goes down one when he is not blitzed. However, the actual passer rating itself is still better versus the blitz than when he is not blitzed, so worth noting there. Rams blitz 11th most in football, but they only generate pressure 25th most, which was a surprising stat when I learned that. Their pressure percentage is not that high on a given play. So that's interesting. Part of me does wonder, again, an aspect for sure is Von Miller, the addition of him, means that they're going to get more pressure. But it also might just be, in part, teams know to have to get the ball out quickly against the Rams, and that's kind of what causes pressures to go down. That could also be a factor. Plus, kind of the way you beat their scheme is typically with quick passes, so that might be it. But still, a surprising number to look at. But basically, what we can learn with this is a lot of people are going to say the key to this game is going to be generating pressure. Well, listen, when you generate pressure, it helps every single team. But the reality is Joe Burrow is really good under pressure. Every team's numbers go down when you're under pressure, but it's not going to be as big of a deal for Joe Burrow as it might be for some other teams. Also, this chart, which is kind of in that same vein a little bit, his PFF grade and passer rating when he gets rid of the ball in less than 2.5 seconds, and also when he gets rid of the ball in more than 2.5 seconds. It's really good regardless. He's number 1 in PFF grade in both categories. He's 4th best in PFF grade when he gets rid of the ball in less than 2.5 seconds, and best when he has more than 2.5 seconds. So the one interesting thing is, will he have more than 2.5 seconds on too many plays? Probably not. I know that the number that the Rams don't get pressure too often is a bit surprising, but I'm going to kind of trust that the Rams will still get pressure, and they will still be able to force Burrow to have to get rid of the ball quickly. And a lot of this, too, is when your first read is open, it takes less than 2.5 seconds. When your first read isn't, it it might take more than 2.5 seconds. So for the Rams, hey, you might get an advantage if you force that first read to be, not available. Burrow has to start looking through other progressions, and he doesn't have that 2.5 seconds because pressure comes. However, again, he's still really good when he's getting rid of the ball quickly. Also, this chart is fascinating. So again, just to be clear in what we're looking at, this is going to be, a couple of things. It's 3 categories now. It's PFF grade, passer rating, and where they rank in terms of how often they throw the ball in that section. Because what we're measuring here is when they throw the ball 20 plus yards down the field, 10 to 19, and then 0 to 9. And so again, the percentage thing on the far right, that is not the actual percentage of throws that go in that direction. It is where they ranked in percentage of throws that go in that direction. So for 20 plus yards down the field, they throw that 14th most in football. For the 10 to 19, it's 28th most in football. And then for the 0 to 9, 6th most in football. I decided to not do behind the line of scrimmage plays. Those tend to not really be that relevant. Kind of just feels a little fluky to me, so I didn't even bother. But for these 3, there are some interesting things to look at. Right off the bat, you're just wondering, like, Zach Taylor, what are you doing? Throw the ball in those 10 to 19 yards down the field range a little bit more, and maybe you could blame Burrow for that as well if you want to. Best Pro Football Focus grade and best passer rating in that range, but they are only ranked 28th in terms of how often they do that. So do that more, you would think. Although against the Rams, what a lot of teams are probably going to, go after and where you're going to attack is going to be that 0 to 9 range, which they're still very good at. 3rd best PFF grade for Burrow, 8th best actual results in terms of passer rating when you get there, and even the 20 plus. Again, Burrow's very good, but the passer rating actually goes down a bit in terms of relative ranking when he's throwing that far down the field. So heading into the Super Bowl, what's the lesson we can learn? Well, I actually think there's maybe a benefit to the Rams is kind of the first way I read this, and I could be wrong, but the reason why I feel this way is because the Rams kind of take away that 10 to 19 yard range, which is really where the Bengals can thrive, which means that, if you're losing the aspect of your game that you're best at, well, that's probably advantage Rams. That's kind of my first logic behind it. Although I guess you could argue it does go both ways. If that's where the Rams defense typically thrives, well, the Bengals are equipped to be able to attack there, although they also don't do it that often. So maybe it's kind of irrelevant. Looking at play action stats versus non-play action stats, Bengals aren't the best at play action, but they don't do it that often. Burrow's 15th in PFF grade, 27th in passer rating, but they rank 33rd in terms of throwing it down to, or using a play action to throw the ball. Which you might be wondering, wait, how are you 33rd there? There's only 32 teams. This is among eligible quarterbacks. So there's about 38 total eligible quarterbacks. They don't run play action much, and they're really good when they're not running play action. Best PFF grade, best passer rating for Joe Burrow. They don't run play action, 6th most in football. So yeah, I think interesting stuff. I like looking at these splits and just seeing what we can learn from these guys, what we can learn about the Bengals offense as a whole. I view these through the lens of quarterback. That's what the numbers are. But I think it tends to tell us more about the Bengals offense as a whole than just the quarterback. One final stat to look at, I've talked about this before, but again, it's interesting. You see someone like Jamar Chase, what you're looking at here is a PFF grade versus man coverage, yards per route ran versus man coverage, and then the same thing but for zone. And so for Jamar Chase, he has 3.92 yards per route ran versus man, whereas only 2.3 yards per route ran versus zone. So he's someone who, just the fact that the Rams play a lot of zone could kind of take that away a little bit. 2.3 yards per route ran is still impressive, but it's a lot less than the really impressive 3.92. And you also have kind of a similar thing with the Cooper Kupp on the other side of the field. So since the Rams are probably going to play a lot of zone, it might be guys like T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, who Boyd's numbers actually get better when he's going up against zone. T. Higgins' numbers kind of stay the same. So it could be a big day for those two guys. Also, Mixon and Uzomah both perform better against man. So there you go. Interesting stuff. What do you guys think of all this? Let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts on all of this data? These videos tend to get a lot of criticism for whatever reason. I feel like people get very angry. It's kind of funny how one of my, heavily criticized series that I do is when I just look at numbers. Kind of is interesting there. I think some people don't like my interpretation of the numbers, or maybe sometimes people just don't like what the numbers say that is true. Maybe people don't want to believe it. But yeah, What the numbers definitely tell us is Joe Burrow is good. What else do you think it tells us? Talk about it in the comments below. What is your interpretation of some of this stuff? Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.